Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Atatiana Jefferson was murdered on October 12, 2019. She was at home, playing video games with her son, and a coward with a gun murdered her right in front of her own child. And that cowardly murderer is still walking the streets free today. The courts refusing to even put him on trial, much less punish him. How this murder occurred was that a neighbor saw that Atatiana's front door was open and he thought that it was unusual. So he made the mistake of calling the local thug patrol to ask them to perform a wellness check. The killer saw this as his opportunity. He didn't identify himself when he approached Miss Jefferson's home. Instead, he stalked around the house like a burglar, gun drawn, looking for an opportunity. Miss Jefferson, seeing that there was a strange person stalking around her home, did what any sensible person would do. She investigated. The killer laid in wait under her window, and the instant that he saw an opportunity, he fired. He never identified himself in all of this time. After the murder, the Fort Worth Police Department tried to justify the murder, naturally, claiming that he saw a suspicious person in the window. In other words, the same old cock and bull story, trying to make it seem as if, she was responsible for her own death. And they were saying that they would release body cam footage and they would be transparent. But of course, as you know, no transparency occurred. But the public wasn't fooled, and they weren't letting this go either. And as the pressure built over the next 48 hours, the police found themselves backed into a corner. Aaron Dean suddenly decided that he wasn't going to be cooperating with anyone, and out of nowhere, he decides to resign. The police department then later that day says that they're going to be charging him with the murder of Atatiana Jefferson. So in only 48 hours, the Fort Worth Thug Patrol went from defending the murder of Atatiana Jefferson to suddenly deciding, all that talk we said about the body cam footage and everything, we've had a chance to look at that and this looks pretty bad. So we know what happened. The murderer decided to jump instead of waiting to get pushed. But the fact that the police's very first move, only a few hours after the murder, mind you, only a few hours after the murder, their very first move was to defend the murderer. And here they were talking about we'll release body cam footage as the FOIA laws allow. Yeah, they just wrote that in there because they thought nothing would actually come of it. But public pressure didn't relent. People immediately began comparing the murder of Atatiana Jefferson to the murder of Botham Jean. After all, Fort Worth is the sister city to Dallas where Jean was murdered. And of course, this is part of a pattern. It's in Texas where they're leading the charge to try to reverse the trend of police finally being held accountable for murdering black people. Now, the murder of Atatiana Jefferson and the charging of her murderer all happened in October 2019. Here we are, and it's June 2022, 3 years later, and the murderer still has yet to even be put on trial. How the hell did that happen? Well, part of the reason was because Aaron Dean's attorneys have tried every lie that they can to postpone the inevitable. And the judge in this case has played along and allowed delay after delay. The murder occurred in 2019. The pandemic struck the U.S. in March 2020, so you know what the first lie was that they used, that the pandemic made it impossible to have a trial. But of course, that stalling tactic wouldn't last forever. Eventually, a trial date was set for November 16, 2021, which was over 2 years after the murder. Aaron Dean's slimy attorneys probably thought that with so much time until the trial, the public would surely move on. Public pressure would surely let up. But it didn't. The public wasn't moving on, pandemic be damned. They wanted to see this murderer punished for his crime. So, with the November 16th trial looming, the defense attorneys claimed that one of their lawyers wasn't ready. And the judge decided to postpone the trial again, this time until January 10th, 2022. Just 2 days before opening motions on the trial were scheduled to begin, the defense attorneys announced that they wanted another delay. The defense said one of their so-called expert witnesses, which means some paid police union whore who lies on the stand, wouldn't be available, so the judge delayed the trial again, this time until May 16th, 2022. The judge said no further continuances will be granted. Then, in April, one of the killer's lawyers suddenly decided they wanted a change of venue, claiming that there's been too much pretrial publicity. They also whined that people would compare the trial of this murderer to Amber Geiger, probably because they're both exactly the same and even the defense knows it. Their problem is that they have the same problem with Miss Jefferson that the white media had with Botham Jean. They can't dirty up the victim. The Fort Worth police tried it, and that fell apart in less than 48 hours. And what the hell do they need a change of venue for? Aaron Dean hasn't been headline material for a long time, and in May, when this absurd motion was presented to the court, everybody was talking about the war in Ukraine last month. Amazingly, the judge denied the motion to change venue, though he did give them yet another postponement, which was what they really wanted, this time until June 23rd. This would be their third postponement in a row. And one of the excuses the defense counsel was using was that their lead attorney was literally belly aching. Literally, one of the three shysters, who was allegedly lead counsel for the defense, is sick and in poor health. The judge, realizing that his own crumbling credibility is on the line, now said that the June 23rd date would hold without exception, though that was the same thing he said about the postponement till May. Only this time the judge gave the defense 3 guidelines for being properly prepared for the new date. Hire a new lead chair, try the case with 2 lawyers instead of 3, or hire a new third chair to join them. Well, as we've come closer to June 23rd, you can guess exactly what happened. May 18th, the defense was back, demanding another hearing to delay the trial again, and this time they threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at this one. They claim that their sick lawyer pal still hasn't recovered. The dude's been sick for months. At this point, it's time to put him in a hospice. They don't have their key defense witness, they said. They also said that they, talking about the defense lawyers here, had notified the court a few months back about their plans to take a vacation in June, which I'm sure wasn't part of their plan to postpone the trial like everything else they've done. They also said that they had other trials and other hearings scheduled and that they wanted the trial pushed back until the fall. By the way, that's what all they were throwing at the wall to see if anything would stick this month. That's what they said. They said that their lawyer pal is still apparently sick. They said that we were about to take a vacation, but all these postponements, as if it wasn't their fault. And wouldn't you know it, our key defense witness isn't available. It's not that the defense doesn't have a key witness, it's that they know they don't have a defense. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power Tools. Because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. But the so-called defense attorneys for the murderer Aaron Dean didn't stop there. They're now demanding that the judge presiding over the case be recused from the trial. They want another judge to be assigned to preside over the case. Now, you know what that means. These guys are shopping for a new judge. This is part of the tactics that a lot of these little white supremacists with law degrees try. If they get a judge that they look at and go, this guy may not be on code, doesn't matter, you need to recuse yourself from the case. They try to find ways to do that, especially in little hellholes like Florida. They'll be looking for judges who they know are friendly with them, so we can imagine what these guys have been doing for the last year or so. They're claiming that they can't get a fair trial with the current judge because he has, quote, grown increasingly hostile, overbearing, and rude to them. That's what they're saying now, just this month. This murder case is now going into its 4th year without a trial. So apparently they didn't have a problem with the judge's disposition until just this month, after he's allowed delay after delay after delay, allowing the most asinine and patently false and clearly phony excuses. They've offered every excuse except for the dog ate my legal brief. That's the only thing that they didn't offer, and I'm sure that's what was coming next. There's no way this judge could have possibly been more accommodating to these scumbags. They're the ones who didn't have their witnesses. Their attorneys are the ones who are out sick. They're the ones talking about they want to take a vacation. They're the ones demanding all these delays. And then when the judge reminds them that the Constitution requires a speedy trial, the defense wants to pretend that the judge is being hostile towards them. The hope of the defense is that they could run out the clock. That's what they're hoping for. Maybe they can get the prosecution to get worn down and cut a plea deal that involves no prison time for the murderer. They hope that they could bury this one, but it hasn't happened. However, this is Texas, one of the most racist states in the country, and these maneuvers are blatantly meant to stall for time in a pathetic attempt to outlast public interest in this trial, and they simply can't understand why the public isn't letting go. But nonetheless, an administrative judge has heard the motion to recuse the judge from the trial. Now, that administrative judge has said that he's going to schedule a hearing on the recusal motion, but it won't be possible to hold one until next week. So the murderer's trial would have to be postponed, which is what the defense wanted. They couldn't get the ruling that they wanted from the judge on the trial, so they're hoping they can get somebody else to give it to them instead. This is an abuse of the legal system's procedural technicalities. Or rather, it's the system operating exactly the way it's supposed to. Another problem for the murderer in this case is the judge put a gag order on everybody involved in this case. So they're not going to be able to do what they did with all of these cops who were going on Fox News or what have you, saying, oh, I had to kill that nigger and I don't feel any guilt about it. It was all their fault. They're not going to be able to pull that one. Not that that would do them any good in this new social climate that we're in. No cheerleading for the racist right-wing media or the obsequious and obedient left-wing media who always justifies a black person's murder at the hands of the police. You've got some die-hard reprobates on that defense team, though. They're determined that this murderer is not going to go to prison. Clearly, this is personal for them. They're on a crusade of some sort. This is part of the pushback by the bad guys. The accountability train is still rolling strong and still picking up more and more unwilling passengers, like Aaron Dean and Kim Potter and other killers. But this is why we have to start remembering who these judges are and putting pressure on them to obey the law instead of always ignoring it. Other people have done that for issues nowhere near as important as ours. You think it's some kind of coincidence that the white media is talking about how people are demonstrating in front of Supreme Court justices' homes over abortion, and how the white media is saying, oh, this is something y'all shouldn't be doing. They don't want it to become habit forming, especially with us. See, when the white right or the white left's interests are at stake, they make sure that anyone who's obstructing them hears about it. That's why I keep bringing up these judges whenever talking about these murderers with badges running around. That's part of their support staff. But all of these frantic, constant stalling tactics by the murderer Aaron Dean's defense attorneys proves to us, this is confirmation that the bad guys know that things are different now. The friendly, permissive, legal and social environment that they enjoyed in the past is no longer there now. The police are actually being punished for their crimes, but the public's not satisfied because the sentences are being undermined by corrupt judges who are basically trying to give what amounts to acquittals from the bench. They have to be made to understand that they are not to defy the will of the people, because the will of the people is the law. Aaron Dean is a murderer. So long as the murder of Atatiana Jefferson remains unpunished, justice has not been served. And this killer should be doing 50 to life minimum, and that's being generous. Police want extraordinary protection under law. They also have to accept extraordinary punishment under law as well. To see Dean's defense attorneys pulling one desperation move after the next does have its own satisfaction. They're terrified of a trial. They should be. They've invested fully in seeing this murderer get away with it, or at the very least, see him get a sweetheart plea deal. But it's just not materializing, so they figure they'll just object to everything and declare that they're not ready until a court finally requires they go to trial. And when they do, don't be surprised if Aaron Dean himself winds up taking the stand and suddenly he's saying, oh, I'm just so sorry, and he's going to try to pull his best Kyle Rittenhouse and Kim Potter. Oh, these white supremacist killers, they always try to put on the waterworks whenever they take the stand. But we're going to continue to keep an eye on this one. Justice delayed is justice denied. And the murderer Aaron Dean has been allowed to duck and dodge justice for far too long already. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Vincent Harper, Chaz, Demond, Mayanne Moore, and Bomber777. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.